Let's just jump right in. We all know the famous names, right? The big historical figures we learn about in grade school. But in today's explainer, we're diving into something I am absolutely fascinated by: the hidden scaffolding of society. We're going to shine a light on the unsung heroes who actually built the foundations of our modern world. I'm talking about the quiet, brilliant minds working in the shadows, the people whose relentless curiosity literally built the conveniences we rely on to survive, to communicate, and to thrive. Let's uncover the overlooked innovators of history. So who really invented the 21st century? I want you to question your own historical assumptions for just a second. You know, we often fall for this myth of the famous lone genius. We have this image of a single person standing alone in a lab, having a eureka moment, and just magically inventing the future. But the reality? Well, the reality of science and innovation is far messier, and it's so much more collaborative. The people who truly shaped the modern era might not be the ones on the tip of your tongue. Just look at this contrast. On the left, we've got the absolute household names: Edison, Marconi, Watson and Crick. But over on the right, we have the forgotten trailblazers: Alessandro Volta, Jagadish Chandra Bose, Rosalind Franklin. As we're going to see, those famous names on the left, they were standing squarely on the shoulders of the folks on the right, innovators whose vital breakthroughs we use literally every single day.
Okay, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll explore connecting the digital age. Then we'll look at feeding and moving billions. Third, revolutionizing health and science. And finally, we'll wrap up with how history is a team sport. Let's get into it.
Starting with connecting the digital age. And hey, just a quick reminder, the very device you're using to watch this on right now, whether it's your phone, your tablet, or your computer, was born from the exact breakthroughs we're about to talk about. Let's rewind to the year 1800. Alessandro Volta creates the voltaic pile. Now, before this, electricity was basically just a parlor trick. It was just random sparks and static shocks used to entertain people at parties. But Volta took a simple stack of copper and zinc plates, separated them with a piece of cloth soaked in salt water, and he completely changed the world. He turned electricity from a wild spark into a steady, measurable flow of energy that you could actually store and use. It was, for all intents and purposes, the very first true battery. The craziest part about all of this is just how fast things accelerated once we had that foundation. Think about it. 1800, we get Volta's chemical battery. Boom. By the 1840s, Ada Lovelace creates the very first machine algorithm. Jump ahead to 1927, Philo T. Farnsworth demonstrates the electronic television. And then in the 1930s, Claude Shannon applies binary code to circuit designs. In just a little over a century, we went from very basic chemical power to the absolute foundations of the internet, information theory, and digital data storage. Take Ada Lovelace, for example. She famously wrote that a computing engine might compose elaborate music of any complexity. She was a poet and a writer, yet she created the very first algorithm intended to be computed by a machine. As the world's first computer programmer, she wasn't just a few years ahead of her time, she was over a century ahead of her time in predicting the limitless potential of what computers could actually do. But you know, innovation also comes with its fair share of overlooked generosity. Let's look at Jagadish Chandra Bose. A lot of experts regard him as the true father of wireless telecommunications. He actually invented the receiver that Guglielmo Marconi used during his wildly famous first transatlantic radio communication. But here's the kicker. Bose just flat out refused to patent almost all of his inventions. Because of that immense generosity, this completely brilliant scientist is often totally left out of the history books, while Marconi walks away with all the credit. And then there's Philo T. Farnsworth. This guy started working on the electronic TV when he was just 14 years old. He demonstrated it in 1927, making TV an actual usable reality. But these massive corporations basically went out of their way to minimize his contributions and pirate his patents. Farnsworth was so frustrated, he actually grew to dislike his own invention. Well, until 1969. Imagine this. He's sitting in his living room watching the first moon landing broadcast live on the very technology he created. That's when he turned to his wife and simply said, "This has made it all worthwhile." Moving on to part 2, feeding and moving billions. How on earth does humanity manage to sustain, feed, and transport resources for our massively exploding modern population? Well, the methods of the past were far more desperate than you might think. To put this into perspective, there's a shocking contrast in how we feed ourselves today versus just a little while ago. Back in the 19th century, agriculture was so incredibly desperate for nutrients that millions of scavenged human skeletons from Europe and bison bones from the American West were gathered up just to make phosphate fertilizer. Oh, and they also used 1 million tons of Paris horse dung collected every single year. Now contrast that with the 20th century Haber process. This breakthrough allowed for the economical fixation of atmospheric dinitrogen into ammonia. Basically, we went from literally scavenging bones to synthesizing chemical fertilizer straight out of thin air. And because of those massive advancements in agriculture, we arrive at this staggering number, 1 billion. That is the number of lives saved from starvation by American agronomist Norman Borlaug. By developing these semi-dwarf, high-yield, disease-resistant wheat varieties, he single-handedly sparked the Green Revolution. He made entire countries self-sufficient in grain, and he rightfully won the 1970 Nobel Peace Prize for quite literally feeding the world. But once you have all those resources, you have to move them, right? And physical goods move around our planet today largely thanks to one guy, Malcolm McLean. His innovative vision was incredibly straightforward. It was literally just a simple metal box. But that standard shipping container completely transformed and revolutionized global trade, making the massive interconnected modern economy we have today entirely possible.
Okay, let's look at Section 3, Revolutionizing Health and Science. We're now moving into the hidden scaffolding of human survival and how we fundamentally understand the universe.
130. That is the staggering number of patents earned by the ceaselessly brilliant chemist Percy Lavon Julian. And what makes this number so unbelievable is that Julian achieved all of this after being born right at the epicenter of Jim Crow America in 1899. Despite facing horrific systemic prejudices at every turn, he became one of the first African Americans to hold a PhD in chemistry and was eventually elected to the National Academy of Sciences. And I guarantee his work directly impacts your life today. Julian figured out new, affordable processes for synthesizing complex chemicals. His breakthroughs led directly to things like the widespread availability of the birth control pill, steroids to treat asthma and arthritis, and the immunosuppressants that are absolutely vital for organ transplants to even work. So many modern medical miracles rely entirely on his genius. Another massive medical breakthrough was confirming the structure of DNA itself. Rosalind Franklin generated the groundbreaking X-ray diffraction imagery that actually confirmed the DNA double helix model. Yet she flew way under the radar for years. Tragically, she died of ovarian cancer when she was just 37 years old. And because Nobel Prizes aren't awarded posthumously, Francis Crick, James Watson, and Maurice Wilkins received the prize and the primary historical credit, while her absolutely vital contribution was overlooked for decades. Now, let's rapidly connect the dots and see how this builds across multiple fields of science. We have John Snow, who totally defeated the bad air disease myth by mapping a deadly cholera outbreak directly to a single London water pump, saving incalculable lives. There's Clara Cameron Patterson, who calculated the Earth's age at 4.6 billion years and spearheaded a massive public health campaign against lead poisoning. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, a self-taught, near-deaf scientist working in total isolation, who was the very first to propose multi-stage rockets for spaceflight. And Leo Szilard, who shared the original patent for the nuclear reactor and actually drafted the famous World War II letter to FDR that Albert Einstein signed. These are monumental, world-altering discoveries by minds that rarely, if ever, get top billing. And honestly, perhaps no one was more overlooked in her time than Emmy Noether. As a woman, she was forced to just audit math classes because the university wouldn't let her formally enroll. Yet she went on to develop Noether's theorem, which established a fundamental mathematical relationship between natural symmetry and physical conservation. Now, I know that might sound super academic, but physicists consider her theorem the very backbone on which all of modern physics is built. Albert Einstein himself even called her the most significant creative mathematical genius since the higher education of women began. No small praise there.
So, bringing us to our final point, history really is a team sport. The modern conveniences we completely take for granted, from the steady flow of electricity hiding in our walls, to the abundant food on our tables, to our deepest understanding of the universe, they are all built on this vast, deeply interconnected web of forgotten brilliance. There's no single lone genius. We rely on every single one of them.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. If our entire modern world was built by these incredible, overlooked innovators working quietly in the shadows, who is quietly inventing our future right now? The scaffolding of tomorrow is being built today by names you might never even hear. So keep your eyes open, stay curious, and always look just a little closer at the hidden world around you. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.